This week, a farmer in Punjab, India sat down and did the math. He grows rice, has grown rice his entire life. His father grew rice. His grandfather grew rice. And for the first time in 3 generations, he is not sure he can afford to plant this season. Not because of drought, not because of floods, not because of anything happening in his field, because of a war being fought 2,000 miles away, by people who have never seen his farm, over resources he will never own. The Iran war started on February 28, 2026. Every news channel in the world covered the bombs, the missiles, the strikes on nuclear facilities, the death of Khamenei, the American aircraft carriers in the Gulf. Nobody covered what was happening to Baldev Singh's rice farm in Punjab. That is the story we are telling today. Here is the thing about modern warfare that nobody explains properly. Wars do not stay on the battlefield. They travel through supply chains, through shipping lanes, through the invisible infrastructure that connects every farm on Earth to every kitchen on Earth. And the Iran war found the most vulnerable infrastructure on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, bordered on one side by Iran, on the other by Oman. Every single day before this war, 20 million barrels of oil passed through that strait, 1/5 of the world's entire oil supply, moving through a gap so narrow you could almost throw a stone across it. But oil is not the only thing that moves through Hormuz. This is the part every news channel missed. 1/3 of all fertilizer traded globally passes through that same strait every week, in ships that are now anchored, rerouted, or sitting idle because the insurance costs to enter the Persian Gulf have become prohibitive. Fertilizer, the thing that makes food grow. To understand why this matters, you need to understand one man. His name was Fritz Haber, a German chemist. In 1909, he developed a process to synthesize ammonia from nitrogen in the air. It sounds technical. It changed everything. Before Haber, the amount of food the Earth could produce was constrained by the amount of nitrogen that naturally occurred in soil. After Haber, farmers could apply synthetic nitrogen directly, bypassing the natural limit entirely. Today, synthetic nitrogen fertilizer is responsible for feeding roughly half the human population on Earth. Half. For billion people eating today because of a chemical process developed in a German laboratory in 1909. And that chemical process requires one essential input above everything else: natural gas. Ammonia production is continuous. It cannot be stockpiled the way oil can. It requires a constant stream of natural gas feedstock flowing into plants that run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, producing the nitrogen that farmers apply to their fields every single planting season. Qatar is the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. Qatar sits on the Persian Gulf. Qatar's LNG exports go through the Strait of Hormuz. On March 3, 2026, an Iranian drone struck the Ras Laffan LNG facility in Qatar. Qatar Energy declared force majeure, a legal term that means they are formally unable to fulfill their delivery contracts. Qatar supplies 20% of the world's LNG. 20%. Gone. In one strike. The ammonia plants that depend on that gas started running out of feedstock within days. The cascade moved fast. Urea, the most widely traded nitrogen fertilizer in the world, began disappearing from global markets almost immediately. Before the war, a metric ton of granular urea was selling for between $400 and $490. By the 3rd week of March, that price had jumped to $700 per metric ton, a 40% increase, in 3 weeks. And the timing could not be worse. Right now, in late March and early April, farmers across the entire northern hemisphere are in the middle of planting season. This is the window, the narrow, non-negotiable window when nitrogen must go into the soil or the crop does not reach its potential yield. Fertilizer is not like gasoline. You cannot apply it late and get the same result. When a corn plant needs nitrogen at week 3 of its growth cycle and does not get it, that yield loss is permanent. The crop does not recover. You cannot fix it in July. An agricultural engineer running a farm outside Berlin said it directly. Our crops need nitrogen now. The sooner the better. So they can get off to a good start, helping them establish themselves and build up reserves for the harvest later this summer. That nitrogen is sitting on a ship, anchored off Fujairah. waiting for someone to decide the Persian Gulf is safe enough to insure again. Walk through the global map of who gets hurt first. India imports over 40% of its urea and phosphate from the Persian Gulf region. Following the drop in LNG output from Qatar, India has been forced to cut production at 3 of its own domestic urea plants. The country that produces 25% of the world's rice exports is now rationing the fertilizer that grows that rice. Baldev Singh, the rice farmer in Punjab, is waiting, hoping the government subsidizes fertilizer before June, when demand peaks and fields need to be planted. Half of India's household budgets go to food. A 5% increase in food prices does not mean eating out less. It means eating less. Brazil is almost entirely dependent on imported fertilizers. Nearly half of its supply transits through Hormuz. Brazil accounts for 60% of global soybean exports. If Brazilian farmers reduce fertilizer application this season, the effect will ripple through every food market on Earth by the time the harvest comes in. Sub-Saharan Africa, where fertilizer use is already critically low, is watching prices spike on inputs they can barely afford in a normal year. In Somalia, which was already managing a drought, food prices have risen 20% since the war began. Sudan imports more than 80% of its wheat. Kenya's maize farmers have 1 week of dry weather to prepare their fields and apply fertilizer. The World Food Program has issued a formal warning. 45 million additional people could be pushed into acute food insecurity if this war continues. 45 million people, not because of a drought, not because of a crop disease, because of a 21-mile strait. And here is what makes this different from every previous energy shock. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the world scrambled to find alternative fertilizer suppliers. It was painful, prices spiked, but there were alternatives, other producers, other routes, other suppliers who could partially fill the gap. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization's chief economist said it plainly about this crisis. The loss of Gulf exports creates an immediate global shortfall with no quick substitutes. No quick substitutes. Unlike oil, there are no strategic international fertilizer stockpiles, no emergency reserves, no coordinated international release mechanism like the IEA triggered for crude oil. The CEO of Yara International, one of the world's largest fertilizer companies, said that a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz for a year would have a catastrophic impact. His word, catastrophic. Now connect the dots. The bombs fell on February 28th. The fertilizer prices jumped 40% by March 20th. The planting window closes in April and May across the Northern Hemisphere. The harvest comes in August, September, October, which means the food price shock from this war will not hit your grocery store this week. It will hit in the fourth quarter of 2026, when the shelves are stocked with crops that were planted under fertilizer stress, when yields come in below forecast, when the commodity traders who bought futures in February at $700 per ton of urea start passing those costs through the supply chain. By the time you feel it at the checkout line, the connection to the war will be invisible. You will not think about the Strait of Hormuz when you see the price of bread. You will not think about Fritz Haber's ammonia synthesis process when milk costs more than it did last year. You will not think about Baldev Singh's rice field in Punjab when your grocery bill is 20% higher than you expected. But the connection is direct, and it was entirely predictable. And the people who make decisions about wars in air-conditioned rooms in Washington and Tel Aviv and Tehran knew, or should have known, exactly what would happen to global food systems when they started dropping bombs near the world's most important fertilizer shipping lane. The Iran war is being covered as an energy story, as a nuclear story, as a geopolitical story. It is all of those things. But underneath all of it, underneath the oil prices and the missile strikes and the carrier groups and the diplomatic back channels, it is a food story. It is the story of what happens when the infrastructure that feeds 4 billion people runs through a 21-mile gap that someone decided to turn into a battlefield. Nobody went hungry because of the bombs. People will go hungry because of what the bombs did to the shipping lanes. That is the bill. And like every bill from every oil war in history, it will be paid by the people who had nothing to do with the decision to start it. Hit subscribe. We follow the oil, all the way to your kitchen table.